Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our webinar with Mindsum and Saabirah today. We are so excited to have everyone here and welcome everyone. Saabirah has prepared an excellent presentation for everyone, and we are so excited to see what this webinar is going to be about and to see everything that we could take away from it. So thank you all for coming to this webinar and attending and taking time out of your day. So Saabirah is a wellness writer, and she will be discussing the thin line between intuition and overthinking. She's going to explore identifying how we know the difference between intuition and overthinking and what methods can be used to help manage our overwhelming thoughts with a focus on compassion, self-compassion. So we are so excited. That seems like a very interesting topic. Here at Mindsum, we are creating a community around wellness and well-being and really getting people to feel comfortable around the ideas of different topics of mental health and wellness. So we do these webinars so people can, engage in a lot of different types of conversations and hear a lot of perspectives on mental health and well-being. So we are super excited to have these types of partnerships and webinars. So thank you so much, Saabirah. At this point, I'm going to make you the host. Thank you so much. And if you need anything else, I will be here. I'm just going to turn off my mic and turn off my camera, but the show is yours.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm gonna figure out how to share the screen. It should come up. Share, yeah. Desktop. Oh. Okay. So I hope you can see. Oh, I'm skipping ahead. Just let me know if the chat, if you can see my screen, just to make sure that I am sharing it. Because I believe I am. Or a thumbs up. Am I sharing? Yeah? Okay, you can see. Okay. Because I don't know if I can have both screens up at the same time. We'll see. We'll see. Let's go to one. I'm giving you guys spoilers now. Okay, I don't understand why I can't have Zoom open whilst I have this open. Okay, so I can't see Zoom whilst I'm here. Okay. No. Okay, we're gonna go. We're gonna just go into it. Hi guys. So hopefully everyone can hear me and see me okay. Again, I'm giving you spoilers and hear me okay because I can't actually see how to see you guys at the same time. But we're gonna go.
Yeah, everything looks good on our end.
Okay, cool. Is this full screen though?
Yep, I see. I mean, we see the top, but everything looks great. It's full screen for me.
Okay, here we go. I'll put it as a full complete screen. Thank you for that. So hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Saabirah and we're going to be speaking about the thin line between intuition and overthinking. There's like a strong focus on anxiety and also self-compassion because I think when you're experiencing any kind of mental health related situation, I think it's important for us to practice self-compassion. And it's not always easy, but I think it's important to do it when you can. So also if you have any questions whilst I'm talking, just put them in the chat and I can answer them right at the end because we'll have like a Q&A session. But yeah, I can't actually see the chat right now, so if there are any questions I won't see them until the end, unfortunately, because I don't know how to get the Zoom up whilst doing this. I'm clearly not very tech savvy, so yeah. And if I start speaking too fast, please let me know because I have a bad habit of doing that. But yeah, hi. Like Patrick said, I am a wellness writer. I started writing for my blog in 2016, I believe it was. And I just wanted to express myself. I just had a bunch of thoughts that I wanted to express and decided that a blog was the best platform to do that because at the time I didn't feel like I could sit in front of a camera and talk about myself. So a blog was my safe space and it just allowed me to share my thoughts, opinions, and especially kind of around like social issues. That's pretty much what I started writing about. And then once you're in kind of like the blogging space, you kind of realize that it's an actual thing, and like people have different categories like lifestyle and wellness and food and all these different things. So I kind of then became a lifestyle blogger because I just pretty much was writing about everything and anything that came to mind. And then a few years, I think probably 2 years into my writing journey, I realized that I wanted to kind of speak about mental health, but wasn't sure how to because I only kind of came into realizing my own kind of experience with mental health. So I did what most people do, and I go and Google and I Google certain different things. I was like, what does anxiety look like? What is it? What does it mean? And that kind of birthed a blog post that I wrote called Is This Anxiety? Where I kind of go into my own experiences and also pulling in different kind of quotes and information from, the wide web because it was new to me. I've always experienced anxiety, but the word itself, I didn't know that was for me. I didn't know that I was someone who actually suffered from anxiety. I just thought I was a bit awkward, a bit shy, a bit socially awkward, and was an introvert. And I just thought all those kind of things just made me into a bit of a person who struggles sometimes. But realizing now that it's actually anxiety and that all these kind of things contribute to different areas of my life, I realized that, okay, I'm going to dedicate some time to figuring out what this is. And going on that journey, I decided to start creating content around it. So I write a lot about wellness now, especially on my blog, and create some content for YouTube. I'm trying. This is part time because I'm trying to be consistent on YouTube. Um, and I am a public speaker. I speak a lot about mental health, wellness, and I also speak about natural hair, my kind of journey with that as well. And I have a podcast for creatives and bloggers because I love speaking to other creatives and other bloggers because everyone has so many interesting stories to share. So I just find those conversations amazing. So I've had that first season, launched that beginning of lockdown, the first one, because that was around the time of my blog anniversary. So didn't intend to start a project when everyone can't do much but sit at home, but it kind of worked out in my favor because you don't really need to go anywhere to record a podcast. I literally did everything in my room, which was amazing. Had a lot of technical difficulties because I've literally sat on podcasts as been a guest, but I've never done anything myself. So it was a whole learning experience, but hopefully season 2 comes soon. But the reason why we're here, I'm the queen of overthinking, so no one can take the crown away from me. It's mine. I wanted to have this conversation because as much as I'm here sharing this information with you, I myself still struggle with overthinking, but there are some things that I do to help manage the thoughts I have and kind of just manage those thoughts because essentially I don't think those thoughts ever fully go away, but there's ways to make it easier to manage them and make it a little bit less stressful. So that's me. And I guess this all pieced together really well because in 2019, I tweeted, how do you trust your gut when you have anxiety? And I can't even say the word, so I'm just going to paraphrase. How do you tell the difference between gut feeling and intuition and overthinking? And this was kind of the responses that I had. So you can see them on the screen. I won't read them all because I'll probably take a while to read them. But yeah, I think it's important to see on the screen that there's some words that you might see again when we get into the presentation as well, because there's some words that stood out for me. And I be honest, when I saw these responses at the time, I did not think that I could really relate to this because when you're overthinking, when you have anxiety, all of the thoughts kind of feel like they're coming from the same place, that fear, the anxiety, the worry, the doubt. And it was really difficult for me to even understand, okay, but no one answered the question, like, what for me does it feel like to have intuition? What does it look like for me? I didn't quite feel like I got the answer. I personally wanted at the time of seeing this. But then as I was putting this presentation together and I've had some experiences and learned some things along the way, I came back to these tweets because I realized how, one, I have grown a bit to actually see how they make sense of how to make sense of these replies. And also I kind of realized that, well, I think when you're a bit clear-headed and when you can actually put things, kind of separate things, you can actually see where these people are coming from when they talk about intuition is more calm and certain, and anxiety is very much fear-based and as we know, fear is good for us, like it protects us, it looks after us. So fear isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think when it comes with, well, not even but I think, but when it comes with anxiety, the fear is kind of constant. It's always there. It's always reminding us of a fear that sometimes doesn't even exist. So it's quite difficult to tell the difference between the two. And that's why we're having this presentation, because when you know the difference between the two, I think you can take some action and help yourself kind of learn to trust yourself, help to understand yourself and your anxiety better, and understanding what the thoughts even mean and what to do with those thoughts that you have. Because it's all good and well, like being aware of having these thoughts. What do you do when you now have these thoughts and you're aware of them? So hopefully that's what you get from this presentation. So intuition, this is actually a definition that I saw on, I believe, the Cambridge Dictionary. So it's the knowledge from an ability to understand or know something immediately based on your feelings rather than facts. So for me, there were some words that stood out, and those were immediately and facts and feelings. Actually, it was those words that kind of stood out to me because those are some of the words that people kind of use when they use their explanation for how to know the difference. And also immediately just stood out to me because I was like, when I think of intuition, I almost think of it as like a reflex. I don't know how you guys kind of interpret intuition. It'll be interesting to know. So like put that in the chat if you want as well. But for me, I kind of saw intuition as like a reflex, something that is immediate, like they've said in the definition. And I thought it quite interesting that it said it's based on feelings rather than facts, because if you're thinking about knowledge and understanding, which is in the definition as well, then certainly that is part of a fact, or that's something that is true to you, essentially. So it might not be fact in the grand scheme of things, but it might be fact for you. So the knowledge of something and being able to like immediately act on that based on the knowledge that you personally have. So it was just interesting to look at this definition and see and kind of pull it apart, make my own interpretation of it, but also understand what it's saying. And kind of you can see that they've used the word feelings, facts, and kind of understanding, as well as some of the words that they said in the tweets where it was like calm, excuse me, and like feeling of calmness, really. And I think it's important to make a note of some of the things that the words, some of the words that have been used, because it's important that we know that intuition is supposed to be something that's calm or something that is immediate, something that is based around feelings as well as understanding and knowledge. I think if we kind of use those words to our benefit, then we can really understand our own intuition, because it looks different for everyone, I think. And overthinking is the action of thinking about something too much in a way that is not useful. I can't lie. When I saw this definition, I was a bit triggered because I didn't want to think of any of my thoughts as being not useful. I didn't want to think like I was spending time thinking about things and they weren't even useful. They weren't useful. Like, I just felt like, oh my gosh, like it just made me look at myself and just think, but why am I having useless thoughts? Like, what's the point? So I don't know if I fully was like okay with this definition, but it's the definition that I saw this. I'll put it in, and each to their own. They can interpret how they want, or you can literally take it as it is. That's fine. And I don't know how you feel about the definition, but I definitely felt some type of way. But I felt like I didn't want to think of my thoughts as useless. But the words that I did pick up on was thinking about something too much, and then also useful, because as we go along this presentation, you're going to understand why it's important to think of thoughts as useful and thoughts that aren't exactly useful, because essentially that kind of helps us to tell the difference between when we're overthinking and the intuition. And I hope it all just ties in together, because in my mind this all ties together, but I could literally be rambling and none of it makes sense, so do let me know if it does. So I've put anxiety and overthinking with two hands together because they are literally partners in crime. They work very well together. They're best friends. And when I'm not friends with them, I'm not friends with the overthinking. I'm not great friends with my anxiety, but they're there. They work very well together. And if you have an anxiety disorder, then you can understand how exhausting it is to constantly have thoughts about worrying or just thinking about things that you have to do or shouldn't be doing or should be doing. It is exhausting. So you might find yourself feeling tired and drained, and you have to be kind to yourself in that time, because like the definition said, you're having thoughts and you don't want to think of them as useless thoughts, because then you spent time feeling drained and you haven't actually physically done anything, but mentally you've done a lot of work, and that in itself is exhausting. So you do have to kind of give yourself a breather and be like, yeah, I might not have run a mile or done a lot physically, but a lot went on in my head, and that can take its toll, because as much as the things that are going on in your head, it does happen to your body as well. Like, we all know some of the symptoms we get when we're in that overthinking state. We might have our heart beating really fast. That is a physical thing that's happening in our body. So there's so many things happening in our body, and if your body's reacting in a way that we see fear, you're going to pump a lot of adrenaline around your body. There's things that it's going to happen. So you're going to be tired even though you haven't even literally moved out of your seat, your bed, whatever. There are plenty of times that I've woken up, felt my anxiety kind of just wash over me, and I'm just laying in bed still as hell, thinking, what am I supposed to be doing with myself? What am I doing? I need to get up. I need to do this. Overthinking. And you're laying in bed feeling tired even though you've just woken up. But it's because it's a very physical, all the symptoms of anxiety. So when this is happening to you, be kind to yourself and appreciate the fact that, one, you've noticed it. And if you haven't noticed it, it's fine. Like, just be kind to yourself. It's not going to help to beat yourself up about time that you possibly have wasted. And I say that with quotation marks because it's not wasted time when your body is doing things and it's trying to tell you something essentially. And you have to figure out whether you use it or you don't. And hopefully you kind of understand what you use and what you don't use through this kind of presentation. But yeah, I'm going to share with you something that my sister said to me a while ago. And I reminded her of it recently. And she was like, wow, I can actually be smart sometimes. I was like, yes, you can be. And I've been using it ever since, to be honest. And I'm paraphrasing because my memory is terrible and I don't remember what she said word for word. But she said, the first thought that you have, focus on that. Everything after that is overthinking. And she said that to me. And ever since, I've literally been saying that to myself every time I catch myself overthinking. I'm like, Saabirah, what was the first thought you had? What was that first thought you had? And I'll be honest, it's scary to like put yourself in that position because essentially when you have that first thought, like what do you do when you have an intuitive thought? Like what do you do now? You're supposed to do something, right? You're supposed to take action. Like if your first thought is like, oh, my friend's inviting me to this party and I want to go. And the overthinking might be like, oh, but what if that awkward person's there? Or what if this happens? What if I fall over? What if I do this? Or what if this happens? That's the overthinking, right? But that first thought was actually, I want to see my friend. I want to see the people that I like. And it could be all those overthinking thoughts. And we have to kind of ask ourselves, like, what's the overthinking telling us right now? And I feel like a lot of the time it's comforting to overthink because it makes us feel like we're prepared or that we're preparing ourselves for something. Because a lot of the time, if we kind of look at our thoughts when we're overthinking, you can relate, hopefully. But if you've ever thought about what you're overthinking about or the things that's going on in your head, do you ever feel like you're preparing yourself for something or that something can go wrong? If you look at those thoughts, you can probably see some thoughts in there saying like, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? Or things like, oh no, that wouldn't work. So like if you look at those thoughts of overthinking and if there's doubt in there, if there's worry, if there's kind of like someone trying to protect you almost, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to ask yourself, is it true? Like, am I actually in danger? Like, is there something there that is like, okay, I actually need to be aware of this. So I'm going to be aware of that on the day or whatever the case may be, then fine. But a lot of the time it's just us trying to protect ourselves. And that's great that we want to look out for ourselves. But at the same time, you have to kind of ask yourself, is it true? You know? And I think I've definitely kind of worried about the fact that now that I'm a more aware of the intuitive thought and the overthinking, I now realize like, okay, when I have this intuitive thought, which is like, oh, I've had this great idea for something. It happened the other day. I had this idea that I wanted to do something. And for me, I always get anxious when I have to now share those ideas because then it kind of makes you accountable, right? And then like if you share those ideas, people tell you it's good, people tell you it's bad, people like, oh, like you become a bit more aware of like people's reactions to it, especially if you're excited about it, if you're thinking about it. So you might hold back. So it literally happened to me the other day. I had this thought, I was like, I want this thing. Spoke to my mentor and she was like, oh, okay, yeah, write them down and we can talk about it next time. And I felt anxious because I was like, but now I have to share this idea I have. And I'm okay with the idea, but sharing it opens me up, to criticism or to people sharing their opinions, which sometimes you don't want to hear because you just want to go with what you want to do. So I know for me, when that happens, I have to focus on that first thought. The first thought was the idea. Everything else is coming afterwards. Like what my mentor thinks, what anyone thinks comes afterwards. The first thought was my idea. And that is essentially your intuition telling you this is the reaction, it's the reflex, it's that immediate thought you have from knowledge, from understanding. The thought I had came from knowledge. It came from an understanding of what I want. It came from knowledge of I've done this before. So when I use that in practice, like I have recently, I've had to realize, okay, I have to now do something. So I have to now actually do what my mentor said and write that idea down and speak to her about it. As uncomfortable as it's going to be. And as scared and nervous as I am, because what if she doesn't like the idea, or what if she thinks it's silly, or what if I'm not good enough for this idea? My intuition's already kind of put that path. And I owe it to myself to at least try. I owe it to myself to at least like dip my toe in and see what it's like, to at least be like, I've had this idea, let me see. Because if we're really honest with ourselves, when we're in a state of overthinking, do we do anything? Do we get that thing done? Do we actually, the things that we're overthinking about, do we actually do those things? If I'm worrying about the 5 things that's going to happen in that setting of me sharing those ideas, like what do I do in that space? A lot of the time, nothing. I know for me, if I'm in a space where I'm just overthinking and I'm worried about what people think, or I'm worried about what might happen or what might go wrong, or if I'm not good enough, I know a lot of the time I don't do anything. I know that for sure in myself. And then I'm beating myself up because I didn't do the one thing that I thought I should be doing, or that intuitive thought that told me I should be doing this. So I've used that as evidence essentially to be like, okay, so when you have that first thought, act on it. Even if you're scared, even if you're terrified, even if it doesn't become like an action that you do right there, right now. It could be something you work your way up to. Fair enough. But at least I'm going to try and act on it. And I say try because we're human. Okay. Things that scare us, we're not always going to jump into. Let's be honest. Like we don't always jump to things that scare us. And I know for me, I don't take a lot of risks. So it's always scary when I have to trust myself. It sounds weird to say that you're scared of trusting yourself, but if I'm honest, I am at times. There are times I'm like, do I know what's right for me? Is this good for me? And I'm having these conversations with myself because of the opinions from other people or whatever the situation might be or whatever the case may be. But a lot of the time you have to trust that intuition because you owe it to yourself to at least see. If you have this great idea, you owe it to yourself to at least, dip your toe in, even if it's a Google search. Like you've had this idea to start your own, I don't know, keyring business. Even if you Google the best way to make keyrings or something like that, that's you at least dipping your toe in. You can at least say now, I know the water is cold because I've tried it. I've dipped my toe in. I know it's cold. You can do that as opposed to sitting and thinking, oh, keyrings are stupid. Like what? Who would make keyrings? Like everyone needs a keyring, but why would I make a keyring that would be more important than one I can get at the car factory? Instead of sitting there kind of having that worry and that doubt. So I just remind myself, what was that first thought? That's the one I'm going to take action on. Everything after that is overthinking. And we're going to kind of get into what to do with the overthinking thoughts as well. Because a lot of the time we feel those quite intensely. We don't always feel them and like, oh, I can, forget about it. I feel like now, because I'm quite an avoidant person, I feel like I'm okay with like being like, oh yeah, I had those, 5 different thoughts on one day and I'm just gonna ignore them, just gonna put it to the side. But a lot of the time they come back anyway, so I don't really fully forget about them, unfortunately. But we're gonna kind of get into what to do with those overthinking thoughts. I think it's just important during this process when you notice the overthinking, just to be kind to yourself. Just be kind to yourself, please. It's important. I think I rambled too much, but when I write in my blog post, I like to do a little article search, Google search. And I found this article about anxiety and overthinking. And this stood out to me, this little quote from this woman. And it says, anxiety causes overthinking. But with anxiety, these thoughts aren't always trustworthy. You've probably heard the quote before. You've probably heard someone say something similar along the lines of, not every thought you have is the truth. You've probably heard it. I know I've heard it. And there's sometimes when my mental health isn't great, I don't care. I don't want to hear it. Like I look at it, I scroll past on Instagram, roll my eyes and be like, you don't know how hard it is right now. Like, don't tell me this fluffy stuff about just like, oh, not every thought you have is true. Everything feels true. Everything feels very real right now. I don't want to hear anything otherwise. I've been there several times and I notice when I'm there as well. And I notice when I'm there because I always notice I can come out of it because I have before. So yeah, what to do when you find yourself overthinking is, I don't know if there's anything that you do as well, please leave in the chat because it could be great to share with someone else that you do. If you ever catch yourself in a state of like overthinking, or you catch yourself overthinking a lot, if there's anything that you can say that you do, please put it in the chat so someone else can like benefit from it as well. It's an open space. We're here to share, we're here to learn. So please do drop it in the chat. But I used to do this, I don't really anymore because I kind of use what my sister told me to do. But I used to say stop. I used to say it in my head because I felt a bit awkward saying stop out loud. My mom might walk into my room and be like, who's bothering you, So I would just say stop in my head. But you can write it down. You can say it out loud. You can even Google the stop sign. That in itself would probably stop you in your tracks anyway. But when I was like researching online for different articles about anxiety and overthinking, there was an article that kind of shared some things that you can do when you catch yourself in that moment. And there was one suggestion. I personally won't be doing it. But I mean, I'll share it just in case anyone was interested. I thought it was quite weird, but I got it. They was essentially talking about putting your hand in a cup with ice because that essentially shocks you, because essentially you're like, wow, that's cold. And your brain's no longer thinking about the things that you was worried about. You're now thinking about, how am I going to stop my hand from falling off because it's frozen? Or how am I going to stop my hand from feeling so cold? So that's where your attention kind of goes to. And I get the message behind it. You're bringing yourself back into the present. Personally, for me, I'm not going to be doing shock therapy. So for me, I do something like saying stop. You might write it down. You might say it out loud. You might say it in your head, however you want to say it. It could be anything. You don't have to say stop. You could say a special word that you have yourself when you want to catch yourself out of it. Because I think it's important to stop yourself if you do catch yourself in the space where you're overthinking. Because when you say stop, you allow yourself to take a break to bring yourself back to the present. Because a lot of the time when you're overthinking, you're thinking about the past, the future, things that could happen in an hour's time, tomorrow. The thing that you don't do right now is going to affect you tomorrow. You're thinking about all these different things. So when you tell yourself to stop, you bring yourself right back to right now. So you can actually sit there with yourself and ask yourself, do I need to think about these things? Are they important? Are they true? And I think giving yourself that space is good anyway, just because we know it can just take you on a whole cycle before you know it, you're just laying there like a starfish on the bed, just like, what do I do with myself? So I think it's important just when you have that control to stop yourself in those tracks, because it's just a lot more beneficial when you're able to kind of see it and stop it, because it's not always easy to do that, but if you can, please try. Because I used to do this quite often. I used to literally catch myself overthinking and say stop in my head, and it would help. But because one, I was just aware I was overthinking, and it makes you aware of the thoughts that you're having. You're aware of what you was overthinking in the first place. You could also be in the middle of a task and then you catch yourself overthinking about something. So saying stop can bring you back to that. Like if you're writing an essay, it's important, and you started overthinking and you say stop, you can bring your attention back to the essay, which needs your attention. Or it could be a thing of like, actually my brain's going off because I clearly need a break. I've been looking at the screen for too long. I've been doing this for too long. Let me go make myself a drink. Let me go make myself a sandwich, like whatever the case may be. Or let me go and order my favorite takeaway, whatever. Like if you need to stop yourself in those tracks because you need to bring yourself back to the present, however you want to do it best, do that. And again, when you notice yourself overthinking, be kind to yourself. That could be literally like you're not treating or rewarding yourself for bad behavior. You're not a child. So if you stop yourself in the tracks of overthinking, it could be a thing of like, I'm just going to have my favorite sweet right now. And I'm going to really focus on what it tastes like. I can taste the strawberry. I can taste the cream, the sweet, or the chocolate filling in the middle, like whatever it is. I know people, when they talk about anxiety and some methods to help, they talk about focus on their senses. So it could be a practice that you do. So you could talk about the things that you can smell, taste, hear, see, whatever the case may be. It could be anything that brings you back into the present, whatever method works back best for you. But it's just important to remind yourself that your overthinking thoughts aren't always true. So I've got this little laughing like graphic because in my tweets I was like, how do you trust your gut? And for me, I definitely struggled. And I think anyone who experiences anxiety can understand that sometimes your body reacts in ways when you're anxious. So I know for me, it might be TMI, but your stomach can like grumble and rumble and feel a bit irritable. I know for me, when I get anxious, my stomach plays up. I know for me, I might get a bit sweaty as well. I'll get really hot. My heart is racing. I feel like I'm stammering over my words. My head feels really fuzzy. So how do you trust your gut when your gut is literally saying, I need to go to the toilet? Like how do you trust your gut and trust the intuition, trust the thought that you're supposed to have, or this feeling you're supposed to have, an idea? When your stomach's telling you, I'm so anxious right now, I need to just relieve myself. I need to get out of this space, hide me in a cubicle. I just need to go to the toilet. Like, how do you trust your gut when that's what it's saying? So your stomach and your brain work together pretty well, like especially when it comes to mental health as well. Like if you eat certain foods, it helps boost your mental health and just the way you feel mentally. So I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it was blueberries that is one of the fruits that are really like good for your mental health. So like I subconsciously eat blueberries to trick myself into feeling better, but I don't know if it's real for me, but yeah, I think it's blueberries. Quote me if I'm wrong, but there are certain foods that you can have. There's certain things that you can eat and whatever that makes your brain feel great. So I think it's important to remember that your stomach and your brain work together, like the rest of your body, essentially. So if you feel like you can't trust your gut, trust what's happening in your mind. Trust what's going on upstairs, because they're working together. So if your stomach is doing something else, let it do what it's doing. All right. If it's rumbling, if it's grumbling and you're feeling anxious, that's okay. Fine. I'll let you do that. Clearly you need to. It's fine. Clearly that's important for you to do right now. Fine. But I'm going to focus on what was the first thought that I had. And that is essentially the intuition. And I'm going to trust, I'm going to work with that. And you probably find that your stomach will ease, or your stomach will feel a bit better, or your mind will feel less foggy, whatever the case may be. Probably, I don't know, maybe not, because essentially you're putting yourself into a position where you're like, I'm trusting my intuition, I'm trusting myself, and that can be kind of scary. So you might still get the same symptoms. But we're hoping that they would ease after a while of practicing it, because you get used to it, you start to trust yourself, and you start to trust the process as well. And like I said, I don't take a lot of risks. So it's these little baby steps that I do to myself to use this evidence. It's like, okay, Saabirah, You know, you took that risk. A lot of people would say it wasn't a risk, but to me, it was a risk to trust myself. And it's worked, you know, a few times. And you can use that as evidence of like, okay, it's worked a few times, I'm going to do it. And you can tell yourself, there will be moments you'll tell yourself, like, yeah, it was a fluke. Or, you know, maybe three was a lucky number. You know, the fourth time I try, I trust myself, it's not going to work. It's going to flop. It's not going to work very well. So we're going to have those moments. And that's pretty normal. But I think it's just important to still be gentle to yourself in those moments where you are just like, I don't know, I'm unsure. And it's like, well, we're only people. Like, we're not going to have all the answers and we're not going to know everything. So that in itself brings some kind of comfort. And I think it's pretty normal to struggle sometimes with trusting yourself. I think with so much going on in life and in the world, and I think we as people will generally kind of take a lot on from other people. So there might be people who expect certain things from you, or maybe there's people who think they know what's best for you, or that they know you better than you know yourself. So you can question trusting yourself, like, oh, actually, I wanted to do this, but someone told me it would be a bad idea if I did it. And it can make you stop trusting yourself, or not even want to trust yourself, because you might think, maybe they know me better than I know myself. But I personally believe, and it's scary to say out loud, but I personally believe we know what's best for ourselves. I think we do. And I say think because there's still a bit of doubt in me. But I want to wholeheartedly believe that we know what's best for ourselves fully, completely. But that just the human part of me is like, there's a little doubt in me that's like, oh, do we though? Do we? But I think it's important to trust yourself and to trust that you know what's good for you at least. And going with that first thought means you do have to trust yourself. And that's scary. So again, be kind to yourself, because no one wants to go into a scary situation and be pushed into it when they don't want to do it. So be nice to yourself. And just, yeah, I think it's important when you're being nice to yourself. Actually, something that I took away from the last webinar with, I believe her name was Michelle, and she said to change your phone screen to a photo of you. So I don't know if you guys can even see me right now. I know you can see the screen, but I don't know if you can see me. But I've changed my phone screen to a picture of baby Saabirah. And I don't know if it's consciously helped. I feel like it's subconsciously helped. Because anytime I do catch myself like being a bit self-critical or doubting myself or speaking negatively on myself, I find that I'm able to quickly snap out of it. I'm able to quickly show myself some compassion and be like, actually, Saabirah, or actually, I have a lot of those conversations on my head recently. So I think subconsciously it's helping, because if you had your phone screen as a picture of you, and like imagine it, like right now your phone screen is a picture of you as a baby or as a toddler, as a child, and you said to yourself, whilst you're in the lowest of the low moods, whilst you're having an anxiety attack, or whilst you're in a difficult situation with your mental health, if you were to say to yourself, oh, you should be more productive. And I can't even look at my phone and say those words, because I'd be here crying in front of you, because it's not nice. Like, you wouldn't talk to yourself like that as a child. And that's still you. Regardless of how old you are, that child is still actually you. So if you wouldn't talk to your child self, your baby self like that, I wouldn't talk to you like that, because no one's going to do something good when they're being talked to negatively. Like, if you're going to ask yourself to do something or grace yourself with trusting yourself and trusting your intuition, I'm not going to do it by cussing myself off or telling myself I'm bad at this and bad at that. I'm going to be like, actually, I trust you. There's a little bit of doubt, but I trust that you know what's best. I trust that the intuition is something I can trust and something I can flow with and go with. I trust that. You know, there's a bit of worry there, but I trust it. If I speak to myself like that, there's a more chance that even if it does fail, there's nothing that I could beat myself up about, because I'm like, when I tried, the journey itself was, yeah, it was a bit scary, but along the journey, I was supporting myself. I was kind to myself at least, and at least I have this experience now. So I think if you try and pull a bit of positive out of it, it kind of helps. But it's not easy to trust yourself. I'd be lying if I said it was. So we're going to get into actually managing your thoughts. So what do you do when you're overthinking? What do you do with these thoughts now? Like, what do you actually do with them? And I've been in different therapy experiences. So I've had CBT and I've had psychotherapy. I was like, what's the word? I was going to say physiotherapy then, but I was like, that's not the right one. It's psychotherapy. And one of the methods they used in CBT was to get me to write down my thoughts and the things that I was worrying about, especially like worries and things like that. And they wanted me to put it in like a chart. So like what was true and what was false. And it's kind of scary to look at and think, what do you mean? Like true and false? What do you mean? Everything feels real. Everything feels like it's literally going to threaten me. Like I feel like I'm in danger right now. How can you tell me that some of these are false? And it does feel quite uncomfortable to actually admit that these are false, because there is, again, that comfort in feeling like we're prepared for the worst, even though that thing might not even be true. we feel comfort in that. And that's pretty normal. Like people want to feel comfortable, they want to feel safe, they want to feel protected. And if we create that for ourselves, a lot of the time that creates a little safety bubble, a little safety net. But we do have to kind of expose ourselves a little bit and say, actually, this isn't real, this isn't true, this isn't something that I need to believe, because it's not actually something that's going to harm me. So putting those thoughts and those worries down into what's true and what's false. And even if it means like you're struggling to figure out what is true and what's false, you might want to Google something like, is it true if this happens? Is it false if this happens? Or maybe you want to speak to someone. If you can speak to a family member, a friend, or even a therapist if you can, or your doctor, whatever the case may be, then talk to someone and ask them if they can help you kind of pinpoint what is true and what's false. Because a lot of the time it feels very real in our head. So why would we think anything is false if it feels very real? If we're having the physical and mental effects of something that is real, we wouldn't believe it's false. But it is. There are things that we think and that we feel that are false. As much as they're there to protect us, you can be like, okay, thank you. Like, I know you're trying to protect me, but right now I don't actually need it. You know, I'm good. I'm safe. And that was one of the things that I practiced with my therapist, which we're going to get onto into next one. So my therapist like to do a lot of physical activity in our sessions. So we use a lot of like physical imagining kind of thing. So she would say things like, yeah, thank you, your thoughts, you know, like, yeah, okay, I see that you're trying to protect me. Thank you for that. But right now I don't need you, or like, I'm safe, I'm okay. And it's like having those conversations, which you might feel silly or weird having those conversations out loud or in your head or whatever the case may be. But sometimes you do essentially have to trick yourself and have these conversations with yourself to make sure that you believe them. I think a lot of the time we can just tell ourselves these lies and believe them, especially if they're lies about ourselves. We can be the most critical of ourselves. So we'll believe the worst of the worst about ourselves. So if we're starting to talk to ourselves in ways that are more understanding, give us more grace, more gratitude, like saying thank you for the thoughts, like, yeah, thank you, you're clearly trying to show me something, but right now I don't actually need them. And that's okay. But one of the things she did, and you can do this exercise with me if you want, but she made me hold out my arms and hold this imaginary box full of my thoughts. And I'm doing this now with you guys. But you hold out your hands, you hold this imaginary box full of your thoughts, and after a while you'll be like, okay, yeah, it's weighing down a bit, but there's only so long you can hold your arms out and hold this imaginary box. It feels heavy, even though there's nothing there. It feels heavy enough that you want to put your arms down. And my therapist said to me, Saabirah, can you actually put the box down? And I was like, yeah, I can. It's just a box. Of course I can put it down. She's like, okay, put it down. So I like literally did the motion of like carrying this box, putting it down on the table. She asked me where I want to put it. She was like, do you want to put it on the floor? Do you want to put it in the bin? Do you want to put it on the side? I was like, I'm just going to put it on the side. Yeah. Like I'll put it on this little table for the thoughts. And obviously you're going to feel lighter in your arms because your arms aren't like hanging in the air. But essentially that motion teaches you that you can put things away. And sometimes you, again, tricking yourself into believing if this box is full of my thoughts and I can put them away, what does that tell me about the thoughts I'm actually having? Can I put them away? Can I put them aside? Can I, put them in a box and forget about them? Can I open the box and just sort through them? So it could be a practice of sorting through them, what's true, what's fact, or you can look at them and ask yourself, what do I need to do right now? Are these thoughts telling me that is anything that's urgent that I can deal with right now? Or is it things that actually I can do that tomorrow? Or that's not even useful. I can put that in the bin. And we did do the action of me like taking the thought and be like, actually, I don't actually need that. Just put it in the bin. And that might take some practice for you to actually feel like that's something that's working, or it might just be one of those things that don't work at all, and that's fine. It's literally, I put a few different things there to hopefully they work for someone. And if not, maybe you can take something away from it, or if not, maybe there's other resources that you can find that's helpful. But I try to make them a bit varied. But sorting for your thoughts, putting them aside, saying I don't need you right now, saying it's heavy. Because like I've put with the guy holding the weights, holding the thoughts are heavy. They weigh you down. They make you feel exhausted. They make you feel drained. A lot of the time they're heavy. You can feel it in your body. You can feel it generally. You can feel it probably the tension in your shoulders, the tension that's in your jaw, your neck, your leg, whatever the case may be. You're going to feel the tension and the weight from those thoughts. If you're someone who overthinks or someone who experiences anxiety or worries or doubts, it's going to be heavy. So ask yourself, can you put it down? Is there something that you need your attention right now? Like if I have a thought, like I said, I had this idea, the action out of that, what could I do right now? I could write down those thoughts that I have. Do I need to do anything after that? Well, probably, but you know what? I've done step one and I'm okay with that. I can do step one, If I had an idea and I was like, actually, what do I want to do with this idea? And I'm like, actually, you know what? I'm not interested. Not right now, anyway. I'll get back to it another time, which is kind of the process I have when I'm writing my blog posts. If I have an idea, I'm going to write the title that I have at the time, a couple of bullet points I have at the time, and I leave it. I literally have a blog post that I started in November. It's being released in a couple of weeks. So my process for writing is pretty much like that. And this is the way I kind of process my thoughts, because a lot of the time you might ask yourself, yeah, I have these thoughts right now and I want to get it out. But at the same time, that's all I have right now. This is the most of the thoughts I have right now. And you kind of have to ask yourself, can I come back to it? And I'm like, yeah, I can, of course. I'm in control of this blog, so I can come back to it. And I do, like I did. Like literally I started a blog post in November of last year and it's going up in 2 weeks' time. Like that's my process, and that's how you can kind of give yourself those visual evidences of you kind of putting your thoughts in different sections of like what needs my attention now, what can I deal with tomorrow, next week, the next hour, 10 minutes, whatever the case may be. Because a lot of the time, like I said, some of the thoughts that we have aren't always useful. So by sorting through what you can do right now, if right now you're saying you need to hoover your floor and it's midnight, like you might have to ask yourself, is it useful to have a thought about hoovering your floor at midnight? The people you live with, are they going to be happy about that? Maybe you live alone, or maybe you live with a pet. Is your pet going to be okay with you hoovering at midnight when they're trying to take a nap? Like, probably not. So you have to ask yourself, can it wait? Yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it later. I'll do it at a reasonable time, you know? So I think just being honest with yourself and asking yourself, are these things that I do need to worry about or put all of my energy in worrying about? And I say it like it's easy. It's not. It takes a lot of practice. I won't lie and say it's one thing you do today, it works tomorrow. This is something I do all the time. I'm constantly in my head because I'm constantly overthinking. Like I said, I carry the crown of the queen of overthinking. So I'm constantly having thoughts. I'm constantly thinking about things. So I'm constantly trying to take bits away from this list of like, is it true? Do I need to do with it now? Can I share it? Can I do this? Can I do that? So I'm constantly doing these things in my head. It's a constant everyday thing. And it's going to take a lot of practice before I get to a point, if I ever get to a point where the overthinking is completely gone and I don't have to worry about it anymore. Because let's be realistic, I don't know if it's ever going to stop, but for now, this works. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take water because I'm clearly talking too fast. I also have focus on the first original thought. And that kind of helps to manage your thoughts, because if you focus on that first thought, that's where your attention is. That's where you're going to be the most present in, because that's where your attention is lying, kind of on that first thought that you had. The overthinking essentially is going to be pushed to the back end, but you're going to have less time to deal with that. Or you can say, I'm going to deal with that later. I'm going to deal with that tomorrow, whatever the case might be. The next one, one that I struggle with the most, delegate. And I thought this was a cute little pun, you know, because the thoughts are heavy and the guy with the weights, I've like shared the load. You get it? You know, I thought it was funny. But essentially the load being that heavy box of your thoughts, you can share that. Whatever's in that box, a lot of the time we carry a lot of the thoughts and feelings, opinions and doubts from other people as well. So we're not even just dealing with our own thoughts. We're probably dealing with others. We're probably dealing with other doubts, other worries, other things that people have maybe expressed that they're stressed about and you want to help them out. You're probably dealing with that as well. And that's a good thing. Like, you want to help people out, that's great. But like the quote, you know, the general quote that people talk about, you have to fill up your own cup. And in doing these kind of things, you're filling your cup so that you can help other people. Because how are you going to help anyone when your cup is empty? Like, you're both going to be dehydrated. you need to have your cup full at least so that you can give something. So in this space of like managing your thoughts, it's important, if you can, to delegate or to share the load. If you're worrying about things that you don't physically or need to worry about, because they're not exactly your responsibilities, your tasks, your worries to worry about. If you're worrying about, for example, the bin men come on Thursday, and I still do this. Today's Thursday, so I've literally done this this morning. I've woken up in a state and heard the bin men outside and been like, have I pulled the bin out to the end of the drive so that they can pick up the bins? I'm worrying about this. I don't live alone. I live with other people. So that's something I don't physically need to actually worry about. Like, you kind of have the saying of like, you know, it's probably better if you do it yourself. And honestly, I swear I lived by that for a long time, because it probably is easier if you just do it yourself. It's probably done better as well. Let's be honest. So a lot of the time we just don't want to wait for someone else to do something, or we don't want to tell someone else to do something else, because we're just like, if I can do it, I'll just do it. But ask yourself, do you have to? Like, are you adding to your load? Are you making your box heavier by adding on things that you don't need to add on? So I think it's just important that you delegate if you can. And I say if you can, because a lot of the time, depending on your situation, that all the responsibilities might be on you. You have a whole list of things to do It might not be always be the support of the people around you to share things with, but if you can, and if there are people you can share with things with, it could be something really small. It could be like, oh, my next door neighbor has 4 dogs, and I haven't got time to walk my dog. Can you walk your dog when you can you walk my dog when you're walking your dogs? It could be something small like that. Well, I say it's small. I have no dogs. I'm a cat person, so this is all hypothetical. You can tell me if I'm totally wrong. If like someone who walks their 4 dogs really wants to take on an extra one, let me know. They probably don't, but it's just an example. If you can share the load, share it and take a break from your thoughts. Last but not least, because I just don't think we're put on this world to be overthinking all the time, to be stressed all the time, to worry all the time. Life is hard. There are so many things that stress us out. So where we can find joy, please just enjoy it. Because I just find that the times when I come up with my best ideas for my blog posts or the ideas of things that I want to do for myself, they always come when I'm literally watching a series. I could be watching The Office. I could be watching someone's YouTube video of them just eating their food. I could be doing anything. I could be playing my Sims, and those ideas come to me and I just make a note of them. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, and I always beat myself up afterwards because I'm like, Sabrina, you know you're going to forget. You're never going to remember that idea. But you just have to let it go. But it's always in those moments that I get something. So even when you feel like you're doing nothing, and I use quotation marks because doing nothing, again, with quotes, is productive. You can't do anything with no sleep, with no rest. If you slept for an hour and went out to do a 4 days of work, you're literally either going to pass out as you get there, if you get there, if you're not falling asleep on your doorstep, and you're not going to be able to concentrate, you're not going to be able to do your best work. So you have to rest in order to do your best. And if you want to be your best, you want to live your best life, get your rest. And oh, that rhymed. That wasn't intentional. But yeah, I just feel like embrace having like finding joy, embrace doing things that you like to do, embrace doing things that you think are silly but you bloody love. Like it could be the most annoying thing to someone else. Like for me, I'm at the moment, my focus is getting my TikTok algorithm to show me plenty of cat videos. That's all I want to see on my TikTok. That is my focus right now. That is my joy. I just want to see other cats having the best life, because essentially I want to be a cat one day. You know, I want to live that life where I'm living rent free. Someone is feeding me however many times a day. I'm getting loads of strokes, loads of cuddles. That's what I want, you know? So if that's your goal, if that's something you want, whatever the case may be, you're going to have to find those pockets of joy where you can, to give yourself the space to remind yourself as well what you want in life. Because how do you think about what you want? How do you think about who you want to be? How do you think generally if you're constantly just going, going, going? So where you can, and I say where you can because we just live such busy lives nowadays, where you can, take a break from your thoughts, watch something funny, listen to music, draw, sing, dance, do whatever you want to do. Play your favorite games, whatever. Just find some joy. It's important. And last but not least, because I feel like I've been talking for ages, which I have, words of encouragement for overthinkers. I always like to add some words of encouragement. Affirmations don't always work for me, but I think if you use affirmations and you word them in ways that you speak, then they actually work a bit better. So if you have maybe an accent, or you say certain words, or whatever the case may be, or you speak a different language, maybe do it in that way so it's a bit more personal. So one example is the one I've said to myself, and these are all things I've definitely said to myself, because they're part of my hashtags, Affirm with Saabirah, which is on my Instagram. These are all quotes that you can find there, and I have some more there as well. But I have said to myself, you can and you bloody will, because that's pretty much how I would talk to myself. So I'm like, Saabirah, you can and you bloody will. So do it, you know? That's how I would talk to myself. So that's how I put it in an affirmation or words of encouragement. So if you do it in a jokey way, or maybe you do it in a way that you would talk to yourself or a friend, maybe that's the best way it can work for you. Affirmations really don't work for everyone. They barely work for me. But when they do work, it's normally because I've used them in a way that makes them a bit personal. So I will leave that on the screen for a little bit. But those are just some of the few affirmations and words of encouragement that I use for myself, to just give myself a break from overthinking, to be kind to myself, to be grateful, to remind myself of the present. And yeah, just to remind myself that I'm human and I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not great all the time. So there's going to be things I'm going to be like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. But we live and we literally learn. So that's just part of the process. But last but not least, my details. So this is where you can find my blog, my YouTube, my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, email. If you want me to send this presentation, then let me know. I can email it to you. But thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. I think I've nearly gone over. I'm gonna see. I was gonna stop sharing the screen, but I think if I should stop sharing. you won't see the details, but
Yeah, you can and you can also hit the stop recording button at the top if you don't mind.
oh yeah, I can see it.
Under the
Oh yeah, I see it.
Zoom.
I don't know if yeah.
Um,
Has it stopped recording?
no, I think it's under either zoom.us on the top, .uk, or it's under meeting at the top.
It's on the bottom. It says pause, stop recording. So I'm